Welcome to the Dairy News and Views podcast, a production of the Iowa State University Extension and Outreach Dairy Team. Our podcast covers current educational, research, and industry tools available for your operation to manage healthy cows and calves while producing the highest quality dairy products.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Dairy News and Views from ISU. I'm not Jen Bentley. I'm your host for today, Gail Carpenter. And we're going to be doing a little series that's going to be something kind of different. I'm joined today by our host, Miguel Rangel. And Miguel's claim to fame is he's got several. Miguel's a great person. Miguel and I got to know each other when he worked at our as the manager of our university dairy. Since then, he's started his own consulting business, and he works a lot with employee management with large commercial dairies. And so he does a lot of really cool stuff. And I really enjoy talking to Miguel about a lot of topics. But we really have a mutual appreciation for people management and understanding how to work with people. And the other thing that's unique, I don't know about unique, but the other thing that's special about Miguel is that he is from Mexico. And so he is a native Spanish speaker. And I, as many of you might be able to guess, am not.
Didn't know that.
Yes. So we are calling this series Spanish Fridays. So I guess I should say, welcome to Spanish Fridays. And Miguel, in Spanish, I would say that as bienvenido a Spanish Friday. That's how bad I am at Spanish. Okay. So how would I say welcome to Spanish Fridays in Spanish?
Oh, dirías, you would say, bienvenidos a Viernes de Español.
Viernes Español? So just
Yes.
Friday, Spanish Friday. Okay. Bienvenidos.
Okay.
Viernes Español. There you go.
Viernes de Español.
Yes.
That's it. Perfect. Good job.
All right. Thank you. And I promise our listeners that it's not just going to be cringy Spanish from me, but there is going to be a lot of cringy Spanish from me. So I want to, so let me set the stage for this idea and why we thought that maybe we should do this series. So I have talked to Miguel and a lot of others who work in kind of the bilingual space, working in employee management and training employees. And I've always said, like, I want to get better at my Spanish. How do I get better at my Spanish? And they say, well, you got to practice. And I say, crap, I don't want to do that. I just want to be good at it, right? I took 2 years of Spanish 1 in high school. And it's not because I repeated Spanish 1, it's because we switched Spanish teachers. So I took Spanish 1 in high school, and then I basically took Spanish 1 again, just from a different teacher. And then I took a semester-long course that was like Spanish for agriculture in college. But that was like 15 years ago. So I find if I'm gonna, like, I'll gear myself up, right? I'll go to a farm and be like, I'm gonna practice like speaking Spanish to the people that work there. And then they just like give me so much pity, right? They start communicating with me in English, or if they have somebody who speaks English around, they start communicating with me pretty quick because they just feel so bad, I think. And I do try, but it's hard to practice when you're not very good at something. And so I invited my friend Miguel to come force me to practice a little bit more. And hopefully we can pick up some vocabulary and some things along the way that other dairy professionals can also use, and maybe start practicing a little bit on their own. And yeah, also maybe talk about like just dairy related topics too. So, Miguel, I introduced myself and I kind of introduced you. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, no, yeah, thank you. No, by the way, it is true that this is how things happen. I remember when we were working at ISU, and one of the things that I always thought was that Gail has a really good engagement with rapport with students. Not only that, they like to work with her. And it was funny that, I mean, I guess I have to say this, but in my case, even you mentioned like students like to work with you. I'm not here thinking I'm the greatest, but it was good to hear from Gail saying something like that. So the purpose of this podcast is that we are going to discuss these topics that are relevant, but most importantly, sometimes overlooked. Because yes, when you are out there working in the industry, these are the kind of topics that people need to hear. You have leaders that, well, sometimes they were just put in that spot, and which is good. But just like anything else, you need to prepare to be in that spot. And issues arise when you have a leader who is not communicating effectively, who is not actually leading with example, etc. And that's when employees get discouraged. That's where employees leave. You have issues in between employees. So there are many things, and I think Gail and I, we are passionate about these topics. We really like it, and I just think other industries are ahead on that regard. The dairy industry is following, so we just need to push so the dairy industry has the same success that some other industries have regarding employees, or in this case, leadership.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
So yeah, Miguel and I have a lot of great conversations about this, and we're excited for the rest of you to hear some of these conversations as well, because I think there's a lot that people can maybe think about with some of the things that we want to talk about. And you can disagree with us. That's perfectly acceptable. And if you have any thoughts, encourage you to leave a comment on this podcast or wherever you saw it posted, um, or reach out
Hmm.
to us directly, because I think that there's a lot of nuance, I think, in some of the topics that we want to talk about, right? And different people have different leadership styles,
Hmm.
and different ways of managing people. And
Hmm.
personally, I think you agree with this, Miguel, but there's no one right way to lead, right? Or to manage people or to manage students or whoever it is. Um, just because something works for your neighbor doesn't mean it's going to work for you, right?
Yes, there is, that's for sure. It's just like any farm. Every farm is different, right? You go to one farm and they have a system that works for them, but you go to another farm, and if you try to replicate, it may not work because each farm has different circumstances. Same with people. People are
Hmm.
different. You need to know the people you are working with, right? And the only way you do that is by actually engaging in conversations or
Hmm.
friendships, etc. Employees need to be understood to a deeper level. That way you know what you're working with. This is very similar to, well, in your classroom, you know who is very keen, let's say, go out of his way to help you do something. There are some that are really good at reading articles and memorizing, remembering everything. And there are some that maybe they are not that good in the classroom, but out there, they have very good animal handling, for example.
Hmm.
Well, it's the same with people. Some people, you just need to understand them better and see how they can be of benefit. But at the end of the day, is that create that genuine relationship with your people so you
Yeah.
know who is who can do what, etc.
There's a concept called psychological safety. And I think sometimes that gets a overused or used in the wrong context, especially in like the education space and working with younger people. But I do think it's something that's very important and very valid, especially when it comes to employee management. Um, in that and so psychological safety is, I should probably look it up because I'm not a psychologist. I should also say that we just really like reading books, right?
Yes.
But uh, this whole idea of you're in a safe space, and I know that might be something that kind of that term safe space might be something that people don't necessarily like either. But my students or my employees should feel safe coming to me if they have a problem, right? And they should be able to come to me and say like, hey, this is something that happened. This is what I've tried to do to address it. Here's what I need. And they should feel like that's something they can do without being yelled at or being like, treated
Scolded.
badly, right? And I think a lot of like psychological safety is something that I think I experienced a lot when I think back to some of my mentors that have really had a positive impact on me. That whole idea that I can go to you to troubleshoot, right?
Mhm.
And not be afraid that I'm gonna get if what happens when you don't have psychological safety is somebody runs into the barn with a skid loader and then pretends like it never happened, and then you're trying to find out like who ran into the building, right? Um, and
Yeah, very
so
common.
yeah. And so if you don't have that, people feel like they're going to hide what's going on versus actually bring it forward. So I know that's a term. I'm actually just Googling in real time, Googling uh, the formal definition for psychological safety.
But
Um,
that is true, and one of those things that is important is that pretty much employees trust you, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yes,
that's a
because
great way to
if
look at
they
it. Yeah,
can't trust you, that's when you have issues. Employees are not going to let you know. It is true that there has, but depending on how you work with your employees, you have to have consequences, right? If something happens, I mean, you cannot have an employee that is running over things left and right, but at the same time, there is a balance. You can also have employees who do something and they come to you and tell you, hey, you know what? I messed up. I'm sorry. This
yeah,
happened. Okay, what are we gonna do now? Okay,
yeah,
the employee is not just gonna get up and leave. Now we need to fix this problem, or at least the owner knows maybe something simpler that someone else needs to fix. But if not, employees need to be committed,
yeah,
so they are part of the team. They feel like part of the team. They know that if they damage a gate,
yeah,
the consequences are for everybody, not just the owner. Not
yeah,
It's not just the cost of the gate. It's all the repercussions around hitting a gate.
yeah. So
Mhm.
I have the definition right here in front of me. Psychological safety is the belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. It's a simple and to the point way of describing that. I think a lot of times people hear the term psychological safety and it kind of has this idea of we're going to hold hands around the campfire and sing kumbaya, right? Which is not like not how the real world works. Psychological safety is not, it is not being able to say to like never having negative criticism, right? It's never being able, it is, I'm going to use the double negative here, so it's going to get confusing. And I'm glad we're speaking English because I would be so much more confused if we were speaking Spanish. Um,
Wait when we get to the Spanish part.
yeah, but it's not never having negative feedback, right? It's not saying that you can't go to an employee or a student or whoever else and somebody that you're managing and say, hey, here's some feedback for you to improve, right? It is not never saying you're doing this wrong. It is not never saying you need to shape up. It is not never saying you need to start coming to work on time or whatever it is. Like just because your feelings might be hurt by some of that feedback doesn't mean that that's not psychological safety, right? Psychological safety is not just feeling warm and fuzzy all the time and just again holding hands around the campfire. But it is making it safe to speak up when when you see concerns, when you have new ideas, or if there's a problem that you need to address. So
Mhm. Yes.
why did I go off on that tangent? I went off on that tangent because I think the idea of psychological safety really ties in with growth mindset. And growth mindset is something that personally been doing a lot of reading about. It's something I've been trying to implement more with my students in particular and some of the people that I manage. And growth mindset is, to me, something becomes growth mindset if I put a yet at the end of the sentence, right? Like, I am not good at speaking Spanish yet, right? And
Yeah,
understanding that just because I'm bad at something now doesn't mean I'm going to be bad at something forever.
exactly.
Um, and and that's okay. And when you have a workplace or a community that has psychological safety, then it's okay to have that. Then growth mindset is fostered in that sense, because an employee can say, like, I am wanting to improve in this area, or a student can say, this is something that I'm afraid to do, but I'm going to do it anyway because I know that if I practice, I'll get better. It also means that sometimes it means you're going to be bad at things when you first do them.
Normal. Yes, it's normal.
So, yeah, and so it's okay. And that's why here I'm trying to model that a little bit with being like, okay, this is something that I'm not actually skilled at, but if I practice it, I can at least get a little bit. I don't think I'll ever be fluent. But at least
Well,
hopefully I can at some point in my life be conversant. Um,
yeah.
so I'm imagining somebody listening to this podcast, listening to our discussion right now, Miguel, and thinking about, um, well, that's really great for Dr. Gale with her PhD up in the ivory tower at Kildee Hall in Ames, Iowa, right? And it's okay on your college campus. You're like isolated from the rest of the world. You're in this like happy little bubble, right, on a college campus. But I can imagine somebody thinking, listening to this podcast and being like, well, but I need my employees to like not mess up. I need them to, and we do, right? We need people to be on time, on task, following protocols, not like sticking to what they're trained to do, right? And so, like, as you're listening to me talk, can you put yourself in that person's shoes and say why some of these ideas might still be valuable on a dairy farm?
No, and I think those are pretty good, great points. And if we imagine that, yes, the dairy industry, we know it's an industry that it's a 24/7, 365. If we are working all the time, it's working, working, working. And yeah, people may wonder, yes, when you talk about these concepts, they sound great, but maybe they are not applicable in real life. The
Mm-hmm.
thing is that they are. The same way university does research about different additives for feed, etc., that eventually they end up in the dairy industry, right? Well, this is research that has been done and that has proven effective. This is research that it's done about the psyche, the mind, right? So let me give you an example, kind of what Gail said. But you have employees, which in the past we used to call stubborn employees, right? They are stubborn, they are stubborn, they are just the way they are. Now we know that with age, stubbornness sets in.
Mm-hmm.
But it is not just because, it is because experience has taught a person that certain things happen certain way, and that's the way it is. Now, when you have employees who they are just stubborn and they are not willing to try something new, or they don't bring new ideas, for example, and they just complain, or they are set in their ways, no matter how many meetings, no matter how many times you talk to them, etc. That is a clear example of a fixed mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Mm-hmm.
opposite of the growth mindset. A growth mindset is just like Gail said. We are not going to, I mean, this is the first episode of this podcast. Is this podcast is going to be perfect? No. But we are not going to stop just because the podcast is not great or
Yeah.
perfect, because that's the limiting factor. At some point, you need to do it, even if it is not as you think it's going to be, because you have to try and then get better with what you learn. So If you have an employee that instead of just complaining about things not being done, says, you know what, I know we have these issues, it's really affecting how I can find the cows that I need to breed, for example, but how can we fix it? What can I do? Right? In the past, we have tried these many things and it hasn't worked, but I have some ideas. So if they bring you ideas instead of complaints, if they are willing to meet with you and talk about what needs to be done, if they are willing to learn from the past mistakes and said, okay, I'm gonna do it different this time. If you tell them, hey, in the past you have done this and you haven't changed, and we have talked about this. So what's going on? So the employee pretty much is gonna tell you, yes, I think I need to improve, or they're gonna tell you, you know what, I really don't care, or it is what it is. It has never been different. So this is what we have, and this is not going to be better. So those are the factors that tell you whether someone has growth mindset or fixed mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think sometimes when it can get a little bit meta sometimes, right? I'm like reading about ways to improve growth mindset in the people that I mentor or oversee or whatever it is. And then sometimes I'm afraid to do some of those strategies because I feel like I'm going to mess them up.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so, like, I think we can, like, it's not just about trying to foster this in the people that you're managing. It's also about fostering it within yourself, right? And being like, you know what?
Yes.
I might not be able to give perfect feedback. I'm going to try this new way of giving feedback and we'll see if it works, right? And but you try and you find out and you learn from that experience, right? Um, so yeah, it's not just about it is about fostering it in other people, but it's also about and this is hard a lot of times telling yourself like, hey, just because I'm not doing this perfectly doesn't mean that
Uh-huh.
I
That
shouldn't be
it
doing
shouldn't
it.
be done.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, that goes both ways. I mean, not only employees need to learn about this, that's the other thing I always tell my clients. We also need to keep improving. And we also need to learn how to talk to our employees. That's why it's important to get to know them. And it is important for us to know how to say things so they are
Hmm.
received better, or at least we kind of create or incite change instead of, well, having an issue with an employee or an employee feeling resentful or just upset.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, with that, I think that might be a good place to wrap up this episode. I do want to talk a little bit about what my goals are. We mentioned this a little bit, but I've got some specific goals in mind. Um, so we want to talk about these, like you said, the topics that are often overlooked. People make farms work, right?
Mhm.
And so we want to spend some time digging into that. But also some more dairy, some more like practical dairy knowledge as well. Um, Personally, I have a couple goals. One of my goals is to practice Spanish and get a little better. My other goal is to not sound like a Karen when I'm speaking Spanish. And I don't know if people will know what I mean when I say that, but I always like, I always think of the scene from Bridesmaids when she's like, we took Spanish together, and she just like spouts rants, like says random Spanish words like,
Mhm.
oh, bienvenido a casa, like it's just like,
Yeah, yeah.
and la escuela, and like just kind of get like, I don't want to sound like when a person is not a native Spanish speaker and is an American, right?
Oh,
um,
we
like a
like you
Midwestern,
mean
like think about me, like I'll just throw myself under the bus, right? Like a
like
traditional
gringa?
Midwestern. Yes.
Gringo or gringa?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say that or not, but um and you can hear in their accent, right? Like the Midwest, like they're saying Spanish words, but they still have like that Midwestern or wherever they're from, like that accent. Like, I would like to be better about not having that accent when I talk or when I
Okay.
try to speak Spanish. So I always feel like when I'm practicing Spanish, like the Midwestern still kind of comes out while I'm doing it. And it just sounds like a Karen. Like it sounds like some like grouchy lady at the grocery store or something like that.
But I guess the one thing that it's important to mention is that a lot of Spanish speakers, they actually acknowledge that you try, and this is for
yeah,
anyone who tries to speak Spanish, even if you think you don't sound like a native, because I know I don't sound like a native English speaker. That's just the way it is. Yes, I always working on it, but it's just your muscles in your mouth, your tongue, they are not geared towards English. They are
yeah,
geared
it's true.
towards Spanish. So that is something that is not, I guess, it's information that is out there, but that's why you can't roll R's like ferrocarril and carro, because
Yeah,
your muscles were not geared. You don't have those sounds. Anyway, try to speak Spanish. Believe me, people care more about you trying to speak their language than how you sound. I just want to leave you with that
yeah,
regarding Spanish in that regard.
that's a fair point. Like I don't judge people for not having a native Midwestern accent. So why should I assume that other people are judging me for not having for having an accent? I have the accent that I have. That's a really good point and a great example of not letting perfectionism stop us from
Otherwise,
trying
I
new things.
wouldn't
Yeah.
speak English, because if I'm gonna think about every single thing that I'm gonna say wrong, even though I know grammatically how to say it, but I make a mistake, even in Spanish, I make mistakes, and you too in
Yeah.
English. So it's
Yep.
normal. Don't worry
Yep.
about that.
Yep. That's a great note to end on.
Yeah,
How would
thanks.
I say see you next week?
We
Hasta
can say,
something.
usually in Spanish, you would say, we see each other next week, right? Nos vemos la siguiente semana.
Nos
That's
vemos?
plural, nos vemos, because we are talking about us,
Okay.
nosotros. So, nos vemos, sí,
Okay.
la siguiente semana, the next week.
La
Or
siguiente semana?
la
Is that what you're
siguiente
saying?
semana.
So
Yes.
nos vemos la siguiente semana?
Yes, like that, with your
Ah, there you
Midwestern
go.
accent.
Well, hopefully
Just
this
like
didn't
that.
scare people away. All
No,
right.
this is a safe space.
Yes, that's right.
Psychological safe
Yeah.
space. People can mess it up.
Yep.
It's fine. We're not gonna judge.
This institution is an equal opportunity provider. For the full non-discrimination statement or combination inquiries, go to www.extension.iastate.edu/diversity/ext.